Well, hello, Lady Grove Park Primary School. I hope you're keeping well. Coming today to tell you a story about somebody who lived quite a few years ago. I'll just put him up on the screen. There, this guy, Samson. He appears in the Old Testament in the book of Judges, which I think is the 7th book in the Bible. And he appears in chapters 13 to 16 of that book. We don't know a great deal about him. From what is written, we reckon that he lived around 1070 BC. So that is, 3,000 years ago. And he was, not surprisingly as it's called the Book of Judges, he was a judge. Now that's not how you and I understand judges. It's not that someone would go to court because we'd done something wrong or been accused of doing something wrong, and Samson would tell us if we're guilty or not guilty. In his days, the Israelites didn't have a king or a prime minister or a president. They believed that God was their ruler and that God appointed judges, not to decide right or wrong, but more to help people if they couldn't make a decision about something. It might be a dispute with a neighbour, or it might be something that they were just trying to work out within the family, but they would go to their judge and the judge would tell them what he felt or she felt was God's answer. And another role, I guess, for the judges in those days was there was a lot of fighting going on, and the judge would often be the leader, or at least the sort of tactician, the person who planned the battles and the campaigns. And in Samson's days, the Israelites were having a lot of problem with this lot, the Philistines. They came from Crete in Greece and then came over to Israel and decided that they were going to develop a colony and gradually take over the Israelites' land. And they were quite a warlike nation. Fortunately, Samson was a very strong person. He was quite hunky, had, they reckon, special strength given to him by God, because as a child he had been dedicated to God and he had never had an alcoholic drink and he had never cut his hair as a way of expressing a commitment to God. He was strong, but he wasn't all that wise. Some of his decisions were a bit dippy, and I want to tell you about a couple of them. Firstly, he decided one day to go and walk into one of the towns that was at that time occupied by the Philistines, the enemies. Wouldn't be a very sensible thing to do, but he did it. And he decided to have a little look around, and he noticed one young lady that he quite took a fancy to. And he went back to his mum and dad and said, "I've found the lady that I want to marry." And while the mum and dad tried to put him off and say, "Look, they're the enemy. I think you really ought to maybe marry somebody who's from Israel." But no, he wasn't having any of it. "I want to marry this woman." And so they had a big wedding celebration. And during that celebration, for some reason, Samson decided to set the blokes in at the wedding feast a little riddle. And he said to them, "If you can't answer my riddle, I want to take all your tunics, your clothes." Why, I don't know, but that's what he decided. Maybe he'd just been partying too much and coming out with some silly ideas. But he decided, "I want everybody's tunic if I win. And if I lose, I will give everybody else a new tunic." And so he thought, well, what riddle can I pose? And it just so happened, as I said, he was quite a strong guy. Earlier on in that day, he'd been attacked by a lion and had fought the lion and killed it. And then on his way to the wedding, he noticed that a bee swarm had decided to make its home in the lion. And so he thought, oh, I think I can make a riddle out of that. And so he said to them, "Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something that's sweet. What do you think I'm talking about? Now, not surprisingly, the guys at the party, well, not many of them had fought a lion, and the chances of seeing a lion dead and then seeing bees living in it and making honey weren't very great. So they all scratched their heads and they just couldn't think. And in the end, they went to Samson's wife and said, look, tell us what this is. We've got no idea, and we're going to lose all our clothes if we don't find out what the answer was. And so his newly married wife went to him and said, oh, you've been so unkind to my friends. They're all from Philistine like I am. And, well, I'm going to be so upset unless you tell me what the answer to this riddle is. And Sam said, well, do you promise not to tell them? I'll tell you. And she said, yeah, I won't tell. Obviously, I won't tell anybody. I'll just keep it to myself. And so in the end, Samson told them the answer to the riddle. And she went straight to them and said, I've got it. I've got it. I'll tell you what it is. And she whispered. And sure enough, they then went to Samson and said, oh, your riddle, I think we've got the answer. You said something that's an eater and something that's strong. I think that's the lion. And something that's something good to eat and that's sweet. I think that's honey. Well, Samson was furious. He was furious with his new wife. He kicked her out straight away, would have nothing to do with her. But also he had to give them all these different tunics. So, I mean, a bit of a really sad side to this story. He went into another town where the Philistines were and killed lots of people, took their tunics and then gave them to the wedding guests. Not the best thing to do, not the wisest of things to do. And then on another occasion, he happened to be in another Philistine town. He just hadn't learnt, and he saw this young lady, and we know this lady is called Delilah, and he quite liked the look of her as well. Couldn't marry her. We probably could, because they allowed more than one marriage in those days, but he wasn't married to her, but he liked her. And so some of the other Philistines said to her, look, we're having problems with that Samson. He is so strong that we're scared of him. And we knew that if we try and fight him, he will always get the better of us and beat us. So can you find out, why is he so strong? What is it? What can we do to make him weaker? And they offered her lots and lots of money. So, sure enough, she went to Samson and said, Samson, I do love you. You're this really butch, hunky guy, so strong. What makes you so strong? How can I make you a little bit weaker? And Samson, being silly, well, not too silly, started to tell her different tales about what was making him strong, but none of them were true. And each time the Philistines tried to overcome him, having been told what they thought was the secret of his strength, he still beat them. And so Delilah got well and truly cheesed off. She nagged him, and she nagged him, and she got really upset. You say you love me, but you're still not telling me the truth about your strength. Why won't you tell me? I don't believe you love me. And in the end, Samson decided to let her in on the secret. It's my hair, he said. I have made a promise to God that I will never cut my hair. And because of that, he allows me to be super strong. Well, Delilah told the Philistines. And then one night, when Samson was fast asleep, she cut off all his hair. And the Philistines came and they grabbed him. And because he was now no longer strong, they got the better of him. They tied him up, and horribly, They pulled his eyes out. They made him blind. And poor Samson was in a right old state. While the Philistines were really pleased. Ha! This judge, this leader of the Israelites, we've beaten him and now we can take over the rest of Israel. No problem at all. We've got nothing to fear. Tell you what, let's bring Samson, this weakling, in front of us and tell him to entertain us. And so they sent some servants to get Samson. And the servants led him to this big room where all these Philistines were celebrating. And Samson said to his servant, I can't see. Can you just maybe help me by bringing me to a couple of those big pillars that are in this room, if I remember rightly. I just want to find something to steady myself so that I can see or I can feel where I am. And so that's what the servant did. He brought him to stand in front of a couple of the pillars. And then Samson cried out to God. God, I am so sorry. I've been such a fool. I've listened to Delilah when I shouldn't have done. I've let them know about my secret with you. Just give me strength one more time so that I can get revenge. And you might have noticed Samson had actually been in prison for a while by now, and his hair had started to grow back. And so he pushed and he pushed at those pillars until the whole building fell down, and it killed Samson and all those unkind Philistines. Not a very happy story, really, is it? But it just goes to show. I know this week you're looking about safety on the internet. And it's easy to look at the Bible and go, well, what's the Bible? A book written 2,000 years ago when computers weren't even invented, let alone the internet. What's that got to teach us? Well, to me, some of the stuff we can learn from Samson is that we need to be extremely careful. Samson trusted his newly married wife. Samson trusted Delilah. They were both young ladies, very attractive young ladies, I'd imagine. And they were loved by him. And they said that they loved him. And so he let them know some secrets, things that he could have kept to himself. We're not asked ever, I shouldn't think, about the secret for our strength. I'd imagine most of us haven't got the same sort of strength as Samson. But sometimes people who pretend to be our friends on the internet, well, they're no different to Delilah or his wife. They're trying to find things out for the wrong reasons. And so things like our date of birth, where we live, our family, our favourite things, we should keep them to them ourselves so that people pretending to be our friends don't use those secrets for themselves. And sometimes we'll be invited by somebody pretending to try and be a friend, or maybe even a girlfriend or boyfriend, might ask us to just send a picture or two of ourselves. I think again, the story of Samson says, don't listen to things like that. Keep those things to ourselves, to be private. The sad thing for Samson was he didn't really have the sense to go back to his mum and dad and say, Mum, Dad, this woman's telling me to share something with her. They had tried to put him off marrying a Philistine woman. It's good for us to have trusted people like our mums and dads, our teachers, that if ever we get asked to do something, And we think, oh, they're asking me something that I'm not sure I should be telling them, not sure it's something I should be showing them. But let's go to our mums and dads and our teachers and check out with them, see what they have to say before we make any decisions. So, a story about somebody who lived 3,000 years ago, but is just as relevant as our lives today. Let's just finish with a little thought. I'm just going to say a little prayer. If you want to agree with me at the end, you can say Amen. Otherwise, just use this as a time to maybe think about how you can be careful with those things that are really important to you. So we thank you for the story of Samson. Recognise that it's not a normal story. Most of us won't find ourselves in the same position as him, and most of us don't have strength because we don't cut our hair or anything like that. But thank you about what it teaches us about how we need to be careful, not just on the internet, but in our lives in general, with our personal information, stuff about ourselves, about our bodies and our minds and our hearts and our care. Help us to learn from Samson and help us to remain and stick to those people that we truly can trust, and help us to identify those people that when things are being asked of us, we can go to them and check out whether what's being asked of us is right or wrong. Amen. So thank you for listening. I hope you're well. Hope to see you again soon. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves and take care of one another and the communities in which you live. And I'll see you maybe next month.